Welcome to tonight's live stream. I'm going to get started in a minute. I just need to let everybody on social media know that the live stream is going on right now. What's going on, Entrepreneur King 816? What's going on, Rudy One? Glad to see you here. Getting ready to get started with tonight's show. And I will be talking about Black folks being stuck in the New Jack City time warp in a minute. Entrepreneur King, if you drop me a cash app, I will be glad to talk about 50 Cent. If you want to talk about him, you can just drop a cash app by clicking the link in the chat, and I'll make that video for you. And Ashura, I heard about what is happening with the casting of Harrison Ford as General Ross, and that really shows the hypocrisy as related to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that's really showing us how much BS there is as related to their standards. My Cash App is Sean S. James, Entrepreneur King 816, and I'm going to drop it again, and it's right there. And if you drop some money on there, I'll make that video for you this weekend. Now, before I get into the topic, I want to let everybody know that I'm still putting in work on the woman crisis, and this book will be ready in November, and I'm almost finished with the editing. And this is a book where I'm hoping that women will go out here and learn why they're having so many problems in life, because this is the companion to the Man Crisis. And it basically is a book meant to help young sisters and young women out here, just like the Man Crisis helped so many men over the last 5 years. Now, these are the Woman Crisis is part of the fall 2022 catalog for SJS Direct. And the second book that will be coming in December is John Haynes at Death's Door. And this is the prose version of the John Haynes at Death's Door comic, which was part of the summer Kickstarter. So this is the prose version for all of those people who went out here and are collecting the John Haynes series books. And Mike Williams is doing he did the fantastic cover here, which is a homage to Frank Miller's Daredevil 158, and which was the start of Frank Miller's spectacular run on Daredevil. So John Haynes at Death's Door is coming in December. And once I finish looking this book over, it's going to be coming to paperback and Kindle. This is my proof copy. And I'm hoping, again, to get this out as soon as in December. So it's coming. And I'm working on a plan to go out here and get John Haynes at Death's Door to readers. So this book will be, I'm hoping to get more of these books out here. I had a viewer ask me about buying copies, and I sent him some of my copies that I had from that I ordered. So he got that through PayPal, and I might do it directly that way because this company is SJS Direct. So I may just do something direct to you. So still working on that with John Haynes at Death's Door, and as related to the comic, but the paperback prose version will be coming out in December. So those are the books coming out, and I'm going to put links to the Woman Crisis and where you can pre-order it on Amazon. So if you want to pick up the companion to the Man Crisis, which is the Woman Crisis, you can pre-order your copy on Amazon.com by clicking the link in the chat. Thank you, Rudy. Mike did a fantastic job on the cover, and I really was happy with the work Mike did on the cover. Mike Williams is the artist on the Deke Sledge comic strip, and he also does all the covers for the John Haynes series. And I have another upcoming John Haynes book I'll be talking about in a future live stream. So look out, there's going to be a lot more John Haynes content coming soon. Ashura, if there's no Cash App, you can always go to PayPal, and I have a PayPal. So if you want to donate to the PayPal, you can use PayPal to go out here and be able to make a donation, or you can go out here and drop a donation to the Patreon. Each of those are ways you guys, if you want to request videos, you can use. I got PayPal, Patreon, and Cash App. So if you're living in a country where there is no Cash App, there's always Patreon and PayPal, and you can make donations that way. And with all of that perfunctory taken care of, I'm gonna get into tonight's topic. Now, tonight's topic was really based on a conversation I was having with a family member, and we were talking about how many Black folks are still stuck in what we call the New Jack City time warp. Now, this, hold on, Ashura, the request, if you want to do a video request, it's $15, and some people, it depends on if you really don't have 15, I'll take 5, but the minimum I usually take is 15 for a request for a video, because it takes me about an hour to go out here and put all that content, to record it and put it together. So I'm only asking for $15 for making a video. So I'm gonna again try to get back into tonight's topic. And again, tonight's topic is based on a conversation I was having with a family member about how some Black folks are stuck in what we call the New Jack City time warp. Now, this New Jack City time warp, me and my family member were discussing, is about how Black folks are out here thinking that it's still like the early 90s when the crack epidemic was going on. And some of these Black folks, because their brain is still stuck in the 90s, they're thinking that they can go out here and be drug kingpins like the Cash Money Brothers. So you've got some of these Black folks out here who are still aspiring to be like the Cash Money Brothers, and they're not really taking a critical look at how times have really changed. So you've got these Black folks who are still thinking the world runs the exact same way that it did in 1991 when New Jack City was released in theaters. And because they're sitting there thinking that the world is still like it was in 1991, they're still aspiring to be the next Nino Brown. So we've got Black folks in neighborhoods sitting around aspiring to be like Nino Brown and his brother G Money and all of the crew of the Cash Money Brothers, and they're thinking that they're going to make whatever neighborhood they're in just like New York was the dark days of New Jack City. Now, what these individuals don't understand is that New Jack City was a movie that was shot, I believe, during 1989 and 1990, and that Your New Jack City was scripted entertainment based on stories of what was going on during the dark days of the late 80s, and when the crack epidemic was in full swing. And Your New Jack City was actually a story talking about how these urban terrorists were terrorizing the neighborhood and how they were destroying the lives of Black people. But sadly, that message is not one that resonated with many of these Black folks who were out here sitting up thinking that they can go out here and become the next Nino Brown. They are still sitting here thinking that this is something to aspire to, but that was not the message that Mario Van Peebles was presenting in the film. No, what Mario Van Peebles was trying to present in the film was that the crack epidemic really was like a civil war in the Black community, dividing families against each other, leading to Black people terrorizing each other, and that this civil war basically ravaged the Black community and turned it into a horror show. That's what I experienced growing up in the late 80s when the crack epidemic was in full swing. And that's what I experienced when I was going to school and trying to go out here and work around the neighborhood dope, man. But the whole thing is, many of these guys out here, they romanticize New Jack City, and because they romanticize New Jack City, they take it for reality, not understanding that time has passed, and that times have passed over the last 30 years, and the world is a completely different place than it was during those dark days of the late 80s and the early 90s. So it's a completely different world, but these Black folks are still sitting here trying to be gangsters like Nino Brown and his crew of the Cash Money Brothers, not understanding that we in 2022, that world out here is a completely different place than the world of your 1989, 1990, and 1991 when New Jack City was released. And that world out there is one where the dope game is completely different, and that dope game is not what it was in the 80s. Thank you very much, Entrepreneur Night. I will be making that video for you. I'll be making that video for you. So that video will be coming out next week. I will film it tomorrow. I'm going to get back into this because a lot of these guys, they're stuck in a time warp and they're not understanding that the world where people were out here fearful of dope dealers is completely different. I mean, a lot of these guys, they're thinking they're going to be ghetto drug kingpins and ghetto drug lords, but that's not the world we live in today. No, the entire dope game has completely changed, and it's not what it was back in the late 80s when we had a war on, well, as related to the streets. No, we live in a world where people are now going out here and buying legal marijuana, buying legal stuff. And that world is filled with people opening up weed dispensaries and opening up stores. And we have Black folks going out here still thinking about pushing crack rocks like they did in New Jack City. And they're not understanding that the whole world of crack got played out in 1991 and was over by about 1993 because the media basically had demonized crack as a Black drug and showed the whole face of crack being that of a crack of being So they showed black people as the face of crack. So it was no longer a trendy and hip drug for whites to go out here and take. And most of those white folks no longer wanted to take crack cocaine because they didn't want to be crackheads like black people. And that drug went out of style, and the lifestyle that went with that drug went completely out of style. But you still got black folks who are still stuck in the New Jack City time warp. And because they're stuck in the New Jack City time warp, they're still trying to go out here and live like they did during those dark days of the late 80s and the early 90s, and still thinking that the world is still running like that. No, the world don't run like that no more. And that era of the dope game was over by about 1993 or 1994, when most of the hood guys who were in that crack game basically were arrested and tried in federal courts and convicted and sentenced to life in prison. So that whole era of the crack epidemic and the crack game is over, but you can't tell that to some black folks who are, after watching New Jack City, still think that New York is still New Jack City, and still think that they are the New Jack hustlers, but you're not the New Jack hustlers. You're just old, played out hustlers, and you don't see how 30 years have passed and how the world is leaving you behind. Because most of those folks who are still stuck in the New Jack City time warp are sitting there still thinking, oh, I can get an empire like Nino Brown. I can be like the Cash Money Brothers, but the Cash Money Brothers have been cashed out by white supremacy. And as your white supremacists have cashed out the Cash Money Brothers, sadly, some of these folks who are caught up in the New Jack City time warp still have not gotten the memo. They haven't gotten the memo that you're never going to be able to build that kind of Nino Brown empire ever again. And you're not going to be able to build that Nino Brown style empire because the laws have changed here in America as related to certain drugs, and because those laws have changed here in America as related to certain drugs, many of the guys out here are no longer participating in these illegal enterprises because these enterprises have been rendered obsolete. And they've been rendered obsolete because many people out here don't need to go out here and sell dope in order to make money. No, there's a million different hustles out here as the internet has entered into the world, into society. And as the internet has entered into society, we've seen people go out here and adapt to that new world and find better legal ways to make money than going out here and selling illegal crack rocks. No, back in the 80s, people sold illegal drugs because there was no internet and there was no marketplace for people to go out here and build businesses. And many of the businesses that were there in the 80s discriminated against black people. So that was the main reason why some black men went out here and went to go out here and sell those crack rocks, because they couldn't get job opportunities. But these days, many black men out here have all sorts of opportunities to go out here and participate in legitimate operations that will allow them to go out here and make money. I mean, there's all sorts of things that black men can go out here and do, like they can do an Uber if they've got a car. They can do DoorDash as well, and that can make them some pretty decent money that will allow them to go out here and make a living. If these companies don't want to give you a job, you can go out here and do the Ubers, or you can go out here and do the DoorDash, and again, get some pocket money for yourself. And in some cases, if you go out here, you can go out here and make enough money to pay your bills. Then there are guys who can go out here and do the eBay thing where they can go out here and learn how to work the collectibles market. Like I have learned how to do that. And you can go out here and learn how to work the collectibles market and go out here and do things like figure flips and things and collectibles. And that's a way to make some legit money. And that's another way guys can go out here and make legit money. And another way guys go out here and make legit money is they go out here and they learn how to flip cars. Now, I didn't know that flipping cars was such big money, but a lot of dudes go out here, they find a ride at the auction for maybe $1,000 or $300, and then they go out here, and because they know how cars work, they go out here and can fix that car up, get that car looking good, get that car roadworthy, and they're out here flipping a $300 car for $3,000, and if they flip enough cars, they can go out here and have enough money to be able to take care of themselves. So you've got guys out here flipping cars, you've got guys doing eBay, you've got guys going out here doing DoorDash and Uber, and then you've got guys going out here and doing things like YouTube, and again, they're getting their channel monetized, and they're going out here making content and making money. And again, all of these ventures are perfectly legal. And since they're legal, a brother can go out here and make some decent money and be able to take care of his bills and even have some money out here to go out here and do things that he wants. So you've got guys out here got all these different things that they can do, like I'm doing right now, like with the SJS Direct Imprint, when I go out here and I publish books like the John Haynes series, or they can go out here and do Kickstarters and crowdfunding and do something like I did with the John Haynes at Death Store comic. So you've got a lot of different opportunities out here for a brother, and nobody has to go out here and deal with the dope game, because the dope game, there's no money in it, and the risk isn't really worth the reward. Now, back in the 80s, when your New Jack City came out in the early 90s, there weren't all of these opportunities out here, and guys went out here and took that risk because they believed that there were going to be greater rewards as related to making that money. And because they believed that the rewards were going to benefit them, they took the risks as related to breaking the law. And guys don't need to do that in 2022. No, in 2022, there are all sorts of different ventures a black man can go out here and do, and he can go out here and participate in these lower risk ventures and possibly get greater rewards by going out here and dealing with legitimate legal ventures. So no black man has to go out here and put money on this whole dope game or even participate in this dope game when there are so many different opportunities out here for a brother to go out here and make some money. So a guy doesn't have to go out here like they did in the late 80s and the early 90s when the crack epidemic was going on. But you've got some black folks who are still stuck in the time warp. And because they are still stuck in the time warp, they're still thinking about trying to build that empire. But the whole thing is, there's no reason to even try to build that kind of empire because we are no longer in that era anymore. I mean, we no longer are in that era, and we are no longer in a time where where the guys have to go out here and be that type of criminal. No, we have all of these different opportunities for black men to go out here and make a living. But sadly, many don't take the risk because they don't see the rewards that are going to benefit them long term. And because they don't see those benefits that are coming to them long term, they still hold on to this archaic idea that they got from the New Jack City movie. and they're not understanding that the archaic ideas that they got from the New Jack City movie were actually there to make you again believe that this is something viable. And again, it's not viable. It has never been viable. And this is something many Black people don't really get who are stuck in the time warp. The entire dope game is a rigged game, and it's a game designed that's set up to make you lose. Now, what many who watch New Jack City don't understand is that the dope game was a rigged game, and it's a rigged game that white supremacy set up in order to take out the Black man. Now, your white supremacists, they basically came up with this to set Black men up so that they could put them in prison. And this was something that was set up way back in the 1970s when President Richard Nixon declared a so-called war on drugs. Now, the Richard Nixon, when he went out here and declared war on drugs, which is absolutely ridiculous, he was basically using that as a code word for declaring war on Black people, especially heterosexual Black men. Now, your white supremacists integrated the Black economy, but they did not want the Black man to be the head of his household, and they did not want him to have economic power. So what they did was deny a Black man opportunities at getting employment. Yes, they had affirmative action in the 70s, but affirmative action, which was originally supposed to go out here and be able to correct past discrimination against Black men on paper, was basically a program they used to go out here and give economic power to white women. And they gave a few Black women jobs, but they gave the Black woman jobs so that they could, again, control the Black economy, because they knew that the Black woman was a consumer, and they also wanted to rub it in the Black man's face and emasculate him by giving the Black woman a job instead of giving him a job. And the goal of this was to, again, make the Black man desperate enough that he felt like, since he didn't have a job, he felt like he had to go out here and participate in illegal and criminal behavior like selling this dope. And what they wanted the Black man to do was go out here and get desperate enough to sell the dope, and then he would wind up getting caught by these law enforcement like the FBI and other organizations, because this trafficking was a federal crime, and they would have a reason to go out here and lock up heterosexual Black men and lock them up for life. So basically what they were trying to do was, again, steer the Black man towards participating in criminal behavior. And as they steered the Black man towards participating in criminal behavior, they would have a reason to lock him up. And again, this is what they wanted to do as related to your Richard Nixon's so-called war on drugs. And as that war on drugs went on in the 80s, they wanted to paint the Black man as the bad guy, and they wanted to again push the stereotype of the Black man being a Black brute, a man who was violent and out of control, who terrorized his community. And that's the narratives they wanted to push as related to the Black man being this terrorist who went out here and terrorized the Black community and was looking to go out here and sell poison to his people. That's the whole core foundation of this whole dope game, which was, again, originally controlled by your white supremacists, whether they be in organized crime or a part of the government. They were all about controlling the dope and sending the dope to Black communities. And sadly, we got Black men who bought into this narrative and did not really understand what was going on. They were so anxious and greedy for the big money that they wound up not thinking about the consequences they were having on their community. And because they weren't thinking about the consequences they were having on their community, they bought into this propaganda, believing that this was the so-called way to go out here and make the big money. And what happened was you had black people basically buying into these narratives, and you had black men, again, terrorizing their own neighborhoods, terrorizing their own communities, and buying into these ideas that, again, were created by white supremacists. And as they bought into this, they bought into all of these different narratives and believed this was the way a black man had to do things. But they didn't see how the white supremacist was going out here and making the black man his own worst enemy. And that's what happened in black communities all across the country in the 80s. And sadly, we've still got black folks who are still caught up in that time warp, still thinking they got to go out here and be a part of the dope game, and still thinking that they've got to go out here and be a part of this criminal enterprise, still thinking that this is something viable for them, but this was never something for us. And all you have to do is go back to the 1971 film, The Godfather, and you will see the white supremacist roots that were a part of the dope game. Because there's a part in The Godfather where Don Corleone says, "Let the N-words sell it." And that really is a powerful statement that many black people really don't really look at when they look at that film. No, many, like New Jack City, romanticize the idea that your Godfather is so powerful, but they don't really look at the critical details of that film, which, again, they're saying that, oh, we're giving this whole criminal enterprise to black people because we don't want our hands to be dirtied by this enterprise. Because, again, the dope game was a very dirty business, and the people who were a part of it were completely unethical. So those guys who were a part of organized crime wanted nothing to do with it except get the money, and they were the ones who sent the black folks to go out here and do their dirty work. And again, it shows us that the roots of the dope game are rooted in white supremacy. And again, nobody wants to talk about that point because all they want you to do is get caught up in the flash of the designer clothes, the flash of the expensive cars, and the flash of living ghetto fabulous. And because you're caught up in the flash of ghetto fabulous, you're not seeing the substance as related to who is controlling the distribution of these substances. Because, again, there's no black owner who has a boat or a plane to bring these substances in. And this is something many black folks really don't look at critically. They sit there and look at the neighborhood dope man, think that he is some sort of celebrity, but the neighborhood dope man has never been a celebrity. No, he's always been an agent of white supremacy. And because he's always been an agent of white supremacy, he is one of these bootlicks who's looking to do dirty work for his white supremacist slave masters. Now, these guys, again, they talked about them even in Luke Cage comic books, how they were a part of the syndicate, and these bottom feeders basically were just the lowest men on the totem pole. And again, they were doing the work of their white supremacist slave masters. And they were bringing poison into the black community to be able to make money off the lives of black people. But you can't explain that to those who sit there and watch the movie New Jack City and want to replicate that whole enterprise in their neighborhoods. No, these people want to sit here and replicate something that really is about, one, selling poison to your people, and two, is an enterprise that is owned and controlled by your white supremacists, who basically are the ones who control the distribution of this product. But they'll sit there and think, oh, Nino Brown has on those tailored suits. Nino Brown had on those designer shoes. He was driving in fancy cars. He was living very well. But this guy was living well on the backs of the people in his community. And the whole thing is, there's no way for a guy to live like that anymore. So there's no way for a guy to live like that anymore because the same white supremacists who control the distribution and sale of those narcotics have taken that away from your black males who compromise themselves. And they're now going out here looking to legitimize their enterprises and now looking to make bigger profits in as related to your whites and your non-blacks by opening up enterprises that are considered to be legal. So your black folks went out here and participated in this criminal enterprise and are still looking to build an empire, but your white supremacists are looking to go out here and shut all of that down and build their own empires and looking to build their empires without ever dealing with any of those bootlicks who went out here and sold poison to their own people. No, right now, what these white supremacists are looking to do is open up these so-called legit weed dispensaries, and they're looking to go out here and open up these businesses where they're making it look like it's a place that's friendly, making it look like a place where it's safe, and they're looking to make a enterprise where they're looking to go open up these shops and again looking to make all of these big profits and looking to cut your black man out. And as your black man is getting cut out, what he's looking to do is go out here and still in the New Jack City time warp, he's still looking to be Nino Brown, even though the white supremacists have gone out here and cut him completely out of the deal. He's still thinking he can go out here and build a business where he's going to be this kingpin, but there's no kingpin anymore because all of your white supremacists have gone out here and made a corporate enterprise where they are the kingpins, and they are the kingpins because they control the seeds, they control the distribution, they control all of the enterprises that bring the product to the black community. But you still got black males out here still thinking it's New Jack City, still thinking they can go out here and play the role that Wesley Snipes played. Well, your Wesley Snipes is no longer playing New Jack City. That's a role he has long forgotten. And the signature role that Wesley Snipes is currently playing is the role of Blade. And he's now focused on being Blade and considering that the signature role. And that's what he's focusing on right now. But you've got Pookies and Ray Rays and Sharkeishes in the neighborhood still thinking, oh, we're going to be like New Jack City. No, you're not going to be like New Jack City. The New Jack Hustler is no longer anyone takes seriously because the New Jack Hustler was hustled and made into a pawn, and that pawn has been replaced by their new pitchmen like your Jaleel White and your Snoop Dogg, who are currently selling weed as related to the legal enterprises, and they're being made into the face of this legal weed, and they're making the money on as related to those products. And those products are now being promoted not to a black audience to destroy their lives. No, they're being sold to white audiences and being promoted as an escape. And that is something many black folks aren't really connecting the dots on because they're still stuck in the New Jack City time warp. They're still thinking about being Nino Brown. They're still thinking about driving around the turf. They're still thinking that they've got actual turf, but they don't have any turf. No, you don't own anything as related to anything. No, there was never anything owned by those guys back in the 80s. And many of those guys, they went to prison and lost everything because they didn't really go out here and look to build wealth. No, they were looking to be rich N-words who in some cases weren't even rich because some of these guys only had a couple $1,000s in their pocket. And all they wanted to do was go get some Jordans, get the light-skinned chicks, look at them at the club, and they have nothing to show for all of their enterprises basically 30 years later. And these guys they were sitting out here buying, selling the crack to black people, and they were looking to go get with the light-skinned honeys at the club and looking to show out with the Jordans, looking to show out with the shearling coat, looking to show out and by buying a girl a Gucci bag. And the whole thing is they have nothing to show for it 30 years later, but you still got folks out here still thinking that they're going to live a New Jack City lifestyle and still thinking they're going to be Nino Brown. No, you're not going to be Nino Brown because Nino Brown is a fictional character. And as a fictional character, he's not real. No, he's a composite of many dope guys back in the day. And he's a composite of the experiences that guys had as related to the dope game of the 80s and the early 90s. And you can't, again, be that guy because that guy was from a different time, but you can't explain that to those who are stuck in the New Jack City time warp. No, those in the New Jack City time warp still think that they're going to go out here and be the big boss of the neighborhood, not understanding that your neighborhood isn't owned by you. And this is what really flies over their head. They're thinking, oh, we've got turf. No, you don't have any turf because your turf is currently now owned by your white folks. Your turf is owned by your Asians. Your turf is owned by Arabs. And those individuals, because they have deeds on the property, they have economic and political power, and they have the economic and political power to boot you from the neighborhood. And that's what's been happening in many places that were ravaged by the crack epidemic, like South Central LA, many parts of the South Bronx. We're seeing more of these white folks, these Asians, and these Arabs buying property in inner cities and basically turning them into their communities. And as they turn them into their communities, you still got folks still in a New Jack City time warp thinking that they're going to run the block, you're going to run the hood. Well, how are you going to run the hood and the block if you own no deeds to any property? Critical question that people have to ask those who are stuck in the New Jack City time warp. How are you going to own anything in a neighborhood where you control none of the property in that area, where you don't own a single deed in that neighborhood? You don't own a single business in that neighborhood. No, all of the economic needs of that community are serviced by whites and non-blacks who control most of the businesses in that area. And you've got black guys talking about, oh, we're going to be like Nino Brown and run the block. Well, in the last 30 years, people have come into your community and they own the block. They run all the businesses. And you're still sitting there talking about New Jack City, but that era again is completely over. And all of those people who were talking about this stuff in the Section 8 apartments and in the hood, they're sitting there watching the neighborhood change and still stuck in a time warp, not understanding that the world is changing around them, and the world is changing around them to the point where it's basically looking to erase you from your own community. That's what flies over the heads of many of those stuck in the New Jack City time warp. Many of these folks who bought your neighborhood over the last 30 years because those in the dope game were not thinking long term. They're not understanding that you being in this game and out here selling this stuff and killing your own people. You weren't out here looking to go out here and buy property in your neighborhood. You weren't looking to build businesses in your neighborhood. And you weren't looking to go out here and pick political candidates so that you could control your economy. No, you weren't any of those things because people got caught up in their emotions about making a little bit of change. And as they made that little bit of change at the expense of the lives of their own brothers and sisters, they weren't really thinking about the big picture as related to things and how they basically killed their own community, killed their own economy. No, they're stuck in the New Jack City time warp and still stuck at the mental age of about 15 or 16, thinking about, oh, I'm going to get the new Jordans. I'm going to go get all of these gold chains. I'm going to be the big guy on the block. I'm going to be seen by all the folks on the block, but nobody is seeing you on the block. And when they see you on the block, basically they see you as a nuisance, and they see you as a nuisance because they see that you're not about building anything. You're not about going out here and building and developing wealth. No, when you're in the New Jack City time warp, you don't see how you've gone from being the big dude on the block to becoming the neighborhood court jester. And you can't see it because you're stuck in the past, and you can't see how you focusing on that movie from 30 years ago has made it where you have no future. And this is something that many of those who are stuck in the New Jack City time warp really can't see because there's nobody there to sit down and talk to them about reality. Now, I remember again a story that I've told about my family member who was in a barbershop one day, and a kid who was stuck in the New Jack City time warp. He sat there talking about he wanted Cash Money Brothers cut in his head, and it took another man to sit down and tell him that New Jack City was a movie and that New Jack City wasn't real. And he was sitting there thinking, oh, Cash Money Brothers, these are real dudes. No, Cash Money Brothers were not real people. Again, a composite of guys who were from the late 80s, who were in the dope game. And this kid thought it was real. And there are many young people who still think that it's real. They're still thinking that Cash Money Brothers is something real, when again, Cash Money Brothers is a script and a story. But you have guys looking to go out here and build a New Jack empire. But I have to tell you, the New Jack era is over. The New Jack era is done. And Black folks, we really need to come into the 21st century because we have a lot of folks who are still caught up in their feelings about the dope man of the 80s, the dope boy of the 80s, who was in high school and was getting all the girls because he was selling rocks to people and that were murdering his people. And we've got a lot of Black single mothers who bought into these narratives right now. And we had a lot of Black girls buying into those narratives back in the late 80s who still have not come out of the time warp. These were the girls who were out here getting the Gucci bag from Pookie, the neighborhood dope man. These were the girls going out here getting the Shearling Colts and the gold chains. And these were the girls dropping the skid mark jockey draws in the staircase because they wanted to get with the neighborhood dope boy. And they were out here looking to get with this guy. And they thought, oh, I'm with this guy and he's going to be able to take care of me. But what happened was, as these girls went out here and got with these guys, dropping skid mark jockey draws to get with these dudes, they wound up getting pregnant at 15, 16, 17, and 18. And I saw some of them when I went to high school back in the early 90s. I mean, I saw girls go get with these guys and then wind up with a baby. And a lot of those women basically derailed their lives right back in 1990 and 1991 and 1992 by becoming single moms. And by around 93, 94, the dope boy boyfriend who was caught up in the New Jack game was brought up on federal charges, and he was locked up for life as related to the war on drugs, which again was a war on black people. And this war on black people, again, disproportionately led to many black men winding up for life sentences and sentences that were 10, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, and you could get locked up. Not you wouldn't even have anything to do with these guys. All you had to do was be on the street with them. All you had to do was be in the car catching a ride, and your whole life could wind up getting completely derailed. And many people don't know about that at all. No, they get caught up in the movie New Jack City. They get caught up in the time warp. They get caught up in the story, and they're thinking, oh, I'm going to be able to build a Nino Brown style empire. But no, you're not going to be able to build that kind of empire in the 21st century, and you're not going to be able to build that kind of empire in the 21st century because, again, the white supremacists have taken the dope game and they've taken it completely away. And now they're in charge of it. And now they're going to turn it into a legitimate business for themselves. And your black man, again, is still sitting out here thinking he's still going to be able to go out here and be a Nino Brown, get the light-skinned chicks, get them to drop the skid mark jockey draws. But he's not understanding that the business is no longer there under his control. No, that control was taken away back in the 2000s, and that control is now back in the hands of the white supremacist who basically has left this black man ass out. And now that he's ass out, he's sitting up here thinking in his delusions, oh, I'm going to be able to run the streets. No, you're not running anything because, again, your whites run the supermarkets, your Hispanics run the bodegas, your Arabs are now running more of the corner grocery stores, the Koreans are running the hair and nail salons, the Indians are running your fast food places. You're not running a single one of these businesses, and you're not running a single one of these businesses because you still are playing it into the white supremacist hands, and he's using your emotions and your desperation against you. And that is something that your guys stuck in the New Jack City time warp aren't really thinking about, how they're being used as pawns and basically being played because they're still stuck in a time warp, still thinking it's 1991. Well, it ain't 1991 no more. I mean, do you see people using tube TVs? Do you see people with Walkmans? Do you see people with VCRs? I mean, these were major devices in 1991, but in 2022, most people have smartphones, most people have laptops, and most people who have smartphones and laptops, they're out here building businesses out here, and they have enterprises that they can go out here and to make money all over the world. But we've got guys stuck in the New Jack City time warp looking to go out here and still trying to make a ghetto hustle like Nino Brown. So they're still out here talking about going out here to be like Nino Brown, but the world is completely different. I mean, I can take a book like this John Haynes and basically sell it in all parts of the globe, but these guys are still sitting in the hood talking about running the block, but nobody's talking about running the block anymore. No, people who are out here are talking about building wealth with by going out here and creating enterprises and creating fixed tangible assets that will have value in the future. Nobody's talking about that in the rest of the world, but those stuck in the New Jack City time warp, they're still thinking that it's 1991, but it's not 1991 anymore. It's 2022, and in 2022, we are living in a completely different world. And in that world, your New Jack City is such a joke that your New Jack City is no longer seen as this, cultural masterpiece that some in the hood see it as. No, your New Jack City is such a joke that we have people looking to actually make it into a stage play. So your New Jack City has gone from being a cultural movie that has influenced some black folks to aspire to be like Nino Brown, but the producers of that movie see it as a way for them to make money, and they see it as a way to make money for themselves because they can go out here and turn it into a stage play. But you've got folks out here thinking, oh, Nino Brown was a real G. No, Nino Brown was a character created by some screenwriter, and your Nino Brown will possibly be singing in the New Jack City stage play along with Pookie the crackhead. And again, this is a mockery of this whole story, which some black folks have invested their emotions into, and they think that they can turn it into reality. But this whole fantasy is something that has led to many people out here believing that, oh, this is real life. No, it's not real life, just like many of those hood movies. Again, this is all scripted entertainment, but you've got folks out here believing, oh, New Jack City is real. I can be Nino Brown. I can be a big time dope man. I can go out here and run my block. But when you look at whose name is on the deed of all of the property in those neighborhoods, you don't see a single black man's name on it. When you look at who is the face at the counter at many of their businesses, you don't see no black man as the face of those companies. No, you don't see any of that because the folks in the New Jack City Timewarp, they're still thinking, oh, I can go out here and still run this hustle when this hustle was rendered obsolete the minute the internet became popular. Once the internet became popular, people could go out here and find new business ventures where they weren't having to worry about neighborhood beefs. They weren't having to worry about shootouts with turf wars. No, people ain't doing that no more. And the reason why they ain't doing that no more is because nobody needs to fight over turf when there's cyberspace. Where there's cyberspace, nobody needs to fight over a block because people are building businesses that are becoming global. And as those businesses become global, what those people can do is they can service customers all over the world. So nobody has to worry about fighting over customers like Pookie who are basically being poisoned to death. No, they can go out here and sell a legit product like I do on SJS Direct, and they can go out here and reach customers all over the world. So that's what people really don't understand who are in the New Jack City Time Warp. They're not understanding that this whole business that you're talking about, nobody does that anymore because there's just safer options for business. What's good, Head Ninja? I'm just talking about black folks being stuck in a New Jack City Time Warp, and I'm talking about how those who watched the 1991 movie New Jack City, they got some black folks who are still stuck in the past, and so stuck in the past that they're still thinking that there's a dope game that's out there, but that's not something any guy needs to do anymore because that whole business has been rendered obsolete, and your white folks have basically taken over the entire dope game, which was theirs anyway. And now what's happening is I'm trying to get people into the 21st century because you've got a lot of black folks who are still stuck in the 20th century, not understanding that the world is a different place and we don't need to be into these kind of ventures because these kind of ventures no longer benefit us. They never did benefit us. and they never really benefited anyone. Again, your white supremacy brought dope into the black community to go out here and destroy the lives of black people. But we've still got black folks still holding on to this archaic concept of being a dope boy or being a thug, not understanding that the internet has rendered that type of venture to be completely obsolete. And we've got black folks stuck in the past. And that's what I'm talking about tonight, because a lot of black folks, they're still stuck in this whole hood mentality, understanding that your hood is being taken away from you because you don't own anything in that hood. And since you don't own anything, people are looking to push you out of your own neighborhood. And that's because we spent 40 years going out here worshiping guys like Nino Brown, who went out here and ravaged our communities, killed our best and brightest people, turned many of our sisters into single moms, and basically destroyed our community. And we're sitting here still thinking about aspiring to be this, not understanding that that aspiration is one that will run against us. What's going on? One who cares. I mean, it's really something that's really sad. And you're right, Head Ninja. It is like watching a VHS tape when streaming services are available. And I had a lot of VHS tapes, but I had to leave them when I moved because they weren't making VCRs anymore. So having a VHS tape these days, it's useless because we have streaming services, and you can just drop $1.99 on a streaming service, and you can basically watch whatever you want. That's with Disney Plus this month. And you can even on Tubi go out here and watch Tubi for free. So people are sitting there talking about, oh, we're still doing the New Jack City thing. We're still trying to be the hood guy. But the hood guy is one who's going to be in a lot of trouble because the world is changing. And basically, you have the white supremacists getting ready to phase this black man out who is terrorizing his community. And he's getting ready to phase him out because, again, he's taking back over the drug enterprises that he had given the black folks in the 70s. And your black folks really can't connect the dots. They're, again, still thinking they can have a New Jack empire. But the whole thing is they've already created a new enterprise. And that's what they're doing right now. They're still thinking, oh, this is a viable thing, but it's not a viable thing. That era is completely over, and that era is basically done. But you've got black folks who are still thinking that, oh, I'm going to be like this. I'm going to be this guy. Well, you can't be that guy when you don't own any of the planes. You don't own any of the boats. You don't own a single anything as related to that hustle. And that sadly is what happens to hustlers who don't know how to adapt. Now, some of these hustlers out here who are a part of that game, they never understood that the whole business of hustling is understanding when the hustle is over, because a seasoned hustler who understands the business, they understand that you have to adapt and you have to get ready for when something is going to end. But those who are stuck in the New Jack City time warp, they don't understand that there is an end game, and they still trying to hold on to this hustle. But you can't hold on to this hustle anymore because it's over at this point. And again, the seasoned hustlers like your Snoop Dogs and many others, they understood that the hustle was changing. They got off this whole New Jack train. And ironically, all of those guys who were a part of those types of that street culture and promoted it in the 90s and the early 2000s, they have jumped off the New Jack Nino Brown train and the thug culture train. And now they are the faces of legit products. Like Snoop Dogg is the face of Corona beer. And he's also got his own legit weed product. And Ice-T, I think he's out here doing some other hustles. You've got all these other guys out here moving on, but you've got some black folks still stuck in this New Jack City time warp. And because they're stuck in the New Jack City time warp, they're still trying to pull this hustle. It's like one of my viewers, again, he asked me to talk about 50 Cent and his son. Again, 50 Cent was deep in the dope game, and now your 50 Cent is now Curtis Jackson Esquire. And as Curtis Jackson Esquire, he's now dealing with a son who is now talking about $5,000 or so dollars isn't enough money. I mean, that's how much things have changed. But you've got folks still talking about they're going to be like Nino Brown. It's going to be New Jack City. And they don't even understand most of those neighborhoods where New Jack City was filmed. And I used to walk around in those neighborhoods. They're no longer filled with abandoned lots. The neighborhood buildings are not run down anymore. And again, all that turf that you want to say is yours has been completely gentrified. And the people who own that property, they just see those black folks stuck in the New Jack City time warp as a nuisance. And they're looking to boot those black folks out of that property and basically turn the entire neighborhood that was once black into another ethnicity, and then basically erase us from the picture. But you can't explain that to these black folks. They're, again, trying to go out here and build a castle on quicksand, not understanding that quicksand is basically going to be filled in with cement, and it's going to be turned into some high value property where they basically price you out of the market. And this is something your black folks don't really understand who are stuck in the New Jack City time warp. No, they're caught up in their nostalgia about the New Jack City musical or the stage play, as they call it. And they're out here getting caught up in their nostalgia and their feelings. So you're going to see all of these black women looking to go out here and spend their money to go watch New Jack City, the stage play. And as they're out here looking to watch New Jack City, the stage play, they're not seeing how their neighborhood is no longer theirs anymore. And that is the whole scary part. Yeah, Head Ninja, it's definitely like what Furious was saying in Boys in the Hood. And John Singleton, rest his soul, tried to warn brothers and sisters about what was going on in the hood. In Boys in the Hood, he was basically trying to tell us that your neighborhood, while you're out here having these beefs and fighting in the street, people are buying up your neighborhood. And sadly, everything he said about South Central is now coming to pass. And your South Central is no longer even called South Central. As the neighborhood has changed from black to Hispanic, they are now calling it South Los Angeles. And again, that's how they erase us from our own neighborhoods. And that sadly happened because black folks were not vigilant. We weren't thinking about going out here and building enterprises and starting businesses. And we weren't looking to protect what was ours. No, we weren't looking to go out here and build wealth. We were out here looking to be the fly guy on the street, looking to be the cool dude on the block. We were looking to be the person who was looking to be a big shot. And we weren't understanding that you sometimes you have to make a sacrifice as related to social currency in order to build tangible wealth. That was something many black folks weren't thinking critically about. And that's why we are so behind the eight ball. But those who are further behind the eight ball are those stuck in the New Jack City time warp. And because they're stuck in that New Jack City time warp, they're still, again, thinking like they were 15, 16, 17 years old, still thinking that this is the hood, still thinking that it's the block, but the block has been bought out from under you. And as this block has been bought out from under you, others are turning it into their community, and they have all the rights because they own all the deeds. While you were out here renting, they were out here buying property. While you were out here chasing women, they were out here chasing properties. While you were out here looking to go out here and have beefs with guys in the street, they were forming political and social alliances and looking to see you as the enemy, because all of this was, again, all part of anti-black racism. And many black folks didn't see the anti-black racism being directed at them as related to everything out here, because they misinterpreted the message of movies like Boys in the Hood. They misinterpreted the message of New Jack City, and they didn't really see the big picture as related to these films and the message that guys like the late John Singleton and the late and Mario Van Peebles were presenting in those films. What they were presenting to you were warnings to try to tell you to empower yourself, but many black folks didn't heed the messages of those films. No, they romanticized the ideas of characters like the guys who shot Ricky in Boys in the Hood or your Nino Brown. They got emotionally attached to those characters and they couldn't see the message that was being presented to them. And they couldn't see how that message, again, were warnings to brothers and sisters. They couldn't really connect the dots. And they couldn't connect the dots because they were, again, caught up in their feelings about, oh, look at how handsome Wesley Snipes is. Look at how fly Wesley Snipes is dressed. They couldn't see that this whole thing was meant to try to help you, and they couldn't see it because they were again caught up in their feelings about Cash Money Brothers, not understanding that the Cash Money Brothers were urban terrorists who were out here destroying your community so that others could go out here and buy it for pennies on the dollar and go out here and build wealth at our expense. They couldn't see that big picture because they wanted to go out here and think that they needed to be Nino Brown. No, we didn't need Nino Brown. What we needed were more Cliff Huxtables, and we needed more guys with a more business mindset like Furious Styles. We needed those types of black men, but sadly, we didn't go out here and heed the message of a Furious Styles, because Furious, again, warned us all that this is what's going to happen to our hoods. And now we don't have hoods anymore. No, what we have are delusional individuals who are living on borrowed time. And they don't even understand that your time is nearly up. And that's what's happening to lots of black people all across this country, because many black folks, again, are caught up in the New Jack City time warp, and they can't see the dark reality that is about to come to them. What's going on, One Full Boss? Glad to see you here. Yeah, the 90s gangster rap really didn't help much, but again, it was all propaganda meant to influence young black minds, Head Ninja, and it was meant to mess us up. And now black folks are in a major predicament because they were never looking at the economics. I mean, finally, since we've gotten new black media, we're starting to see more black people starting to take that critical look at their communities. We're starting to see black people starting to take a look at their economic and political process, and they're starting to take that critical look at themselves and realizing that we are way behind the eight ball because a lot of people are stuck in the New Jack City time warp, and we've got folks finally starting to wake up, coming out of the time warp, coming out of it 30 years later, and not understanding how little time they have to get things together. I mean, that's something black folks aren't really thinking about as related to this New Jack City time warp. I mean, you've lost 30 years as related to things in your community's infrastructure, and you've lost a lot of time. And this is something that if you want to try to rectify it, you're going to have a much harder time, because you had all of the building blocks in 40 years ago, but you sold those building blocks. You pushed out your black-owned businesses, and you don't really and then you bought into this propaganda, not understanding all of this was meant to mess you up. And because you didn't want to pay attention, because you were caught up in the New Jack City time warp, caught up romanticizing ideas instead of looking past the first layer and looking at the substance of that story. Because the movie The Godfather, again, was one that told us why they wanted you to sell this stuff 40 years ago, and a lot of people didn't get it. Then later on, you had other movies coming out, and they were trying to send you a message, black folks, but you had to come out of the time warp to be able to see the message. And that message is one that more black people need to come out here and wake up to see. And thankfully, we do have new black media out here trying to open up black folks' eyes. And many black folks are finally starting to wake up out and come out of the New Jack City time warp and understanding that we got to get ourselves together if we want to be able to move this black community forward. Now, I'm going to get ready to wrap up tonight's stream. And before I wrap up tonight's stream, I did everybody to go out here and put in your pre-order for The Woman Crisis or pick up a copy of The Man Crisis. And I've got a lot of great black fantasy fiction on the SJS Direct imprint. A lot of positive black titles on the SJS Direct imprint, like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, and the John Haynes series. You can buy all of those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. And you can also find those books on Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. So you can buy all of my books here. And buy all my books here on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format by clicking the link. And that is something you can go out here and do to help the SJ, help me out and help build this black-owned business. And if you also want to support the channel, you can support the channel by donating to the Cash App by clicking the link in that. That's something else you can do to help out the channel. Or you can go out here and send in a donation through PayPal or Patreon. And again, that helps me to be able to do more videos and live streams. And all of your help would be greatly appreciated because it helps me stay on the air. Now, this was a topic I was very passionate about because I see so many black folks who don't really understand economics, don't understand politics, and they are sitting out here still thinking about being a New Jack City style kingpin, not understanding that the world has changed. And it's like Willa 3R was saying that, yeah, property ownership has regressed to the 70s level. And again, this is what happens when you don't really pay attention to the subtle politics transpiring around you. This is something I talk about in novels like I did The Temptation of John Haynes and The Thetas. I try to get people to understand, the big picture, because the longer we stay in a New Jack City time warp, the faster the future comes on us, and we find out there's no place for us in that future. Now, I'm going to get ready to wrap up tonight's stream, and I want to thank everybody for coming out to tonight's stream, and I hope you'll be there for next week's stream. Have a good evening and have a good night.